Zuck is making the classic successful founder mistake. He thinks his magical brain is what discovered the idea and made Facebook successful. In reality, he was reacting to the moment and got very lucky. His brain and development skills helped, but he has no grasp of the quantity of luck that led to his success. These people are hailed as tech leaders, and every time they reveal themselves to be little more than people who caught a lucky break and thereafter are stuck following trends forever in the vain hope that it will keep the line going up. It's stupid and wasteful, and I wish we could learn from this.
Remember when there was a valuation that they were going to be able to sell assets such as a six-figure virtual home to every user? It's just unbelievably bonkers how much they had their heads stuck up their own asses with this delusional project.
Honestly, it feels like when someone rebrands their whole personality for a trend and then quietly pretends it never happened, like the idea sounded futuristic but nobody actually wanted to live in a headset all day, so now it's just an expensive lesson that hype doesn't equal real demand.
Zuck has shown he cannot build new, he can only acquire IG, WhatsApp, and copy stories, reels, threads. He probably did rip off the Winklevoss twins because it fits the pattern.
I didn't get a job 5 or 6 years ago because in the final interview they asked me how I would approach a strategy for the metaverse, and I said I wouldn't waste money on it because it would never take off. Waiting for them to call me back now.
I saw it coming. Nobody wanted that shit. You only needed to look at Second Life and where it wound up to see that metaverse was doomed and pointless. They were late to the party with an idea that the very tiny niche of folks who might have wanted it before were already burnt out on.
We all knew this was gonna flop. They could have spent like $100K on proper research to prove nobody wanted it. Unfortunately, these kind of folks only listen to research when it aligns with what they were gonna do in the first place. I can tell you from experience.
They tried to force a future instead of finding one people actually wanted.
I feel like if I cost my company 80 billion quid, I'd be packing my shit in a cardboard box the next day. I want to find it funny, but I can't help but think that Zuck, the one responsible for this fuck up, will continue to be one of the richest people in the world after this. Meanwhile, tons of people hired to work on this thing are getting laid off. Billions wasted on creating a dystopian virtual world nobody asked for. Don't care if he renames it to Beta Cuck tomorrow and blows another few billions. What I care is that it makes money by stealing our personal data and selling it to highest bidders.
It's obvious. People told Meta this but thought they could brute force it. VR as a form factor has deep and intractable bottlenecks that prevent mass market appeal. Something Meta thought they could change and failed. The future, in my humble opinion, would put VR as a subset of AR, as that has a lot more potential real-world applications than total sensory VR, which should be a one more thing. From an AR device. Look, I think Zuck is but how many times does it need to be said? Meta spent $80 billion on their entire VR/AR platform and hardware development as a whole, not on Horizon. Still an insane amount, but it's not what they spend on one platform that is now mothballed. The hardware etc. is still very much alive and they still have the lion's share of that, still relatively small market. For me, we're only a few iterations of the technology away before it goes mainstream, and Meta will likely be number one by a mile.
I guess it is hard for Mark to accept all he has built in his life as an ad, hate and addiction trap.
Engadget Meta isn't shutting down its VR metaverse after all. https://www.engadget.com/ar-vr/meta- isn't shutting down its VR metaverse after all 165520696 HTML. Zuckerberg deserves to fail. This was something nobody wanted and they burned through ungodly amounts of money. Mainly due to ego, I think. Burn it all down. Facebook/Meta can afford it. Starting in 2000, newspaper ads and classifieds began migrating to the internet. Ads and classifieds were a massive business, and network effects being what they are, Meta and Google dominate it now. Meta can throw billions down the drain because they'll make it right back from their advertising sales. Of course, letting two companies dominate ad sales that used to be spread across 10,000 newspapers large and small is another issue. Our society has made a choice to let Meta and Google do that as an effective duopoly.
The project came in the worst time possible. It was too late to have an impact and too early for the current technology possibilities. My guess, Zuckerberg was a fan of Ready Player One, saw it was a commercial success, and thought it was the future, so he rushed to be the first to implement the idea in real life.
Did they really lose/spend 80 billion? I have to assume this is some accounts fraud, tax avoidance shenanigans.
Turns out stealing an idea once doesn't make you a visionary.
Big deal. Plenty more money where that came from. Meta will just sell data about your trips to the liquor store to your health insurance company.
People imagine the Matrix not balancing a phone on the end of your nose when you say metaverse. I feel like it's obscene. Read Careless People by Sarah Wynne Williams if you want to understand something of the mentality of that little toe rag Zuckerberg. Spoiler, it's worse than you think.
People talk about wealth redistribution and having billionaires stop hoarding their wealth. Well, that was $80 billion redistributed. $80 billion that went to middle-class workers, that went to factory workers that VR headsets, to bricklayers that built the factories that make it. Facebook guy literally just stopped hoarding $80 billion and sent it to regular folks. But Reddit isn't happy and thinks their Facebook guy should have just let it in bank.
Schadenfreude for me. 80 be wasted and here I sit trying to save for retirement. I don't think he'll make it to.
Huh, no one wanted some fake-ass corporate vomit VR world? Who would have thunk?
My thoughts are thus: fuck Facebook, fuck Meta, and fuck Zuckerberg.
There are two, sometimes very different types of folks on marketing teams, those who figure out what customers want, and those who convince customers what to want. You're supposed to listen to the first group before conceiving a product, and the second group after. Mark did it backwards.
I think it was a successful venture. Does anybody even remember why the name change was implemented? After a Facebook whistleblower took to Congress to talk about all the harm that Facebook and IG were causing, the CSAM materials that are so casually advertised and traded on the site, and the main fact that Zuckerberg didn't want any of these studies coming out. He pivoted to a brand change so Facebook wouldn't be lumped in with teenage mental health issues, suicides, and sex traffickers. And it worked, because here we are talking about the dud that Meta was. And it worked perfectly to distract from the absolute dumpster fire of sexual abuse and teenage manipulation that FB and IG are. $80 billion to crawl out from under being a bridge for traffickers and teenagers? $80 billion to crawl out from hosting millions of files of SAM? $80 billion to crawl out from letting parents on IG traffic their kids? Ask Zuckerberg if it was a waste of money. It's probably pocket change to stay out of prison for the charges he'd be up for.
Just because you have money doesn't mean you have any sense. What a waste.
Google has wasted many billions more on products that they tossed into their product graveyard. Facebook needed to expand its brand beyond just the social network, similar to why Google restructured as Alphabet. Meta just happened to be the name that Zuckerberg picked, and it didn't matter that it was named after the metaverse, but rather that Facebook had a broader suite of products than just one social network, and the name did not represent that.
I hope they burn even more money on dumb shit than die.
Mark needs to find better ideas to steal instead of trying to make something. Stick to what you're good at. Almost all billionaires are incredibly lucky people with no more talent, intelligence, or perseverance than any of us.
The $80 billion number is misleading and everyone keeps repeating it. That budget covered all of Reality Labs, which includes Quest headsets, Ray-Ban smart glasses, AR research, and the Metaverse social platform. The Metaverse social app, Horizon Worlds, was a fraction of that spend. What actually died is the idea that people want to hang out as legless avatars in a virtual office. The hardware side, Quest, smart glasses, is still very much alive and doing fine. Meta just learned the expensive way that VR is a gaming and productivity tool, not a social network replacement. Second Life figured this out 20 years ago for free. They didn't rebrand to Meta just for the metaverse. They rebranded because they purchased a number of companies like Instagram and WhatsApp, and this is a more encompassing name that doesn't pigeonhole them into Facebook. It feels like when someone who thinks everyone must like them BC look at all the things they got throws a huge party for themselves and no one shows up. For 4.5 years. The metaverse bet was the most expensive panic move in tech history. Zuckerberg saw TikTok eating Instagram's lunch and thought, what if we just leave this dimension entirely? $80 billion and all they got was Horizon Worlds, which looked like a Wii game from 2007 but with worse social features. Meanwhile, TikTok kept growing and Zuck eventually pivoted to AI, which is what he should have done from the start. But here's the contrarian take: Meta's not actually dumb. They accidentally built one of the world's largest AI research labs, FAIR, while chasing the metaverse. The GPU infrastructure they bought for VR rendering turned out to be exactly what you need for training AI models. They stumbled into the right position for the wrong reasons. The rename itself was smart branding. Facebook the product is for your parents. Meta the company sounds like it builds the future. Perception matters when you're recruiting engineers. TLDR, terrible strategic bet, accidentally great infrastructure investment, solid rebrand. The universe has a weird sense of humor. Nobody knew what metaverse actually meant. They kept hyping it out and blowing it out of proportion without explaining what it actually was.
It's insane what 80 billion could have bought instead. The UN said 6 billion would be enough to prevent world hunger and save millions from starvation and malnutrition. So it could have prevented all that suffering for more than a decade. Our priorities as the human race are completely fucked. Very few get insanely rich while others starve and don't have clean water. You have to be a psychopath to think that okay.